There are, and I think this goes without saying, but here I am saying it anyway, strata through which the staying power of any given character can be ranked. There's an incredible tier list video concept in there if someone wanted to play the algorithm. There's your generic ones that disappear as soon as their series ends, there's your unique but not particularly charming ones, neither of which I'm going to show any examples of, both to avoid making people angry that I called their favorite unique but not particularly charming, glass houses and all that, and because it's by and large very subjective. Once in a blue moon though, so I guess every 2 years or so, a character comes along that's so magnetic and charming that their popularity is largely shared universally. Their characters most people can agree are a cut above. They've crossed the subjective divide and entered the realm of objectivity, and thus enter the pantheon of characters people will, even years later, mention in passing and sigh wistfully. A character whom the mere thought of provokes responses of, "Ah, character name, I miss them." For example, I'm not quite sure why I still think about Amagi Brilliant Park's Isuzu Sento as much as I do, but she sure is up there. It's possible it's related to the fact she's named after 50 Cent, and like most cultured people, I spend about 3 hours ritually bowing to my 17 boxed copies of 50 Cent Blood on the Sand every day, so there's a clear link there. The point remains, however, she's a character I still think fondly on over a decade later. This is evidently something that animation studio Passione also feels strongly given their quest to bring back a character I'd consider another one of the all-time greats, Amati. No, I'm just kidding. Piss off, you little twerp. It's hollow, of course it's hollow. I'm a simple man, all it takes is one... And I've melted, and presumably so too, albeit in perhaps a more worryingly literal sense, did anyone attempting to bring back Spice and Wolf, seeing as it's taken 15 years for more material of her to appear. Well, save for those VR games which let you, the viewer, see what it's like to have a cute wolf girl tell you you're a moron after you buy 16 pineapples, presumably because you're a pervert, for a goat and a stick of butter from the Hebrides. I don't actually know what those games are like if my previous sentence didn't give that away. All I know is about half the people on my Steam friends list are using the hollow tail-wagging mini profile, so at least they're flying their flag proudly. But again, here we see tangible evidence that she's a character whose legacy endures to this day, or that my Steam list is full of fucking furries. I am of course kidding, I don't believe Kimono Mimi girls constitute furry stuff, and I'll die on this hill. I feel I should also mention, for no particular reason whatsoever, that Passione were also behind the animation of Interspecies Reviewers, which, you know, if you wanted to put a studio behind Spice and Wolf, I mean, they're not an unwarranted choice to a certain extent, if you think about it, you know. Not that I haven't seen it, I didn't. Now, I opened this review with a reference to the quality of characters, and it is, of course, upon those same characters that this series' narrative turns. You know, unlike every other show on Earth whose plot revolves around, say, a particularly interesting tree in the foreground, so even though I'm assuming you're versed in the narrative if you're watching this, allow me to briefly summarize. Kraft Lawrence, the same man who would later achieve immense financial success with his brand of repellent off-yellow sludge, is a traveling merchant who, upon stopping in a village to purchase their wheat, finds that the hamlet's resident pagan god, Hollow, or to use her full name, Hollow the Wise Wolf, has gotten sick of trying to teach these mud-tossing peasants about the importance of crop rotation and sneaks into his cart, asking him to take her to her old home, the far northern town of Yoitsu. Proving her worth almost straight away as a shrewd negotiator and consummate liar, Lawrence agrees to travel north with her on the condition that she help him with his mercantile pursuits, his dream being to finally have enough money saved up to afford a shop of his own. He even doodles little pictures of it like a schoolboy idly thinking about cool swords in the middle of class instead of actually learning French. Between that and finding Kimono Mimi girls attractive, he's a very relatable character. Really, it's a show about the relationship between the two of them as they slowly make their way north, enduring one financial misadventure after another, and very much like Bungie's famous classic Halo Reach, before it begins, we know how it ends. It's made even more clear, effectively transparently so, with this adaptation which uses the framing device of this series being a story hollow. I mean, this mysterious woman who sounds suspiciously like Ami Koshimizu is regaling a white-haired young person with, who could these silhouetted characters be? Nobody knows. Thank Christ they've already said work on a second season has begun. I couldn't take the thought that I might have never seen these two unmasked, and don't search for any information on a sequel series for that matter. So clearly Hollow and Lawrence do a little interspecies reviewing of their own at some point down the line, and thus this 2024 incarnation of the series especially frames the narrative as a development of the relationship between these two characters, with it presented as a canonical inevitability. This is an example of a genre some refer to as romance. Knowing it all works out fine in the end sucks some of the tension out of certain scenes, perhaps in a lovely example of what I like to call an oops we Persona 5'd it framing device, but that doesn't stop the scenes from working. Beyond that, there's a level of earnest honesty to this series being presented as a literal retelling of the story of Spice and Wolf, which works on a more meta level. For example, Amati, that little gutter snipe, and his endeavors to win Hollow's hand had me more invested in bartering and currency inflation than I've ever been in a more traditional action sequence. The tension of watching the speculation market run amok with a very attractive wolf girl as the alleged prize has a way of doing that. I'd never thought talking about currency exchanges could be so unbelievably compelling watching until I watched the 2008 series about a decade ago. It's genuinely white knuckle at times. Spice and Wolf does for economics what Ace Attorney does for the legal system. It makes it nail-biting. And that's something that, regardless of which adaptation you watch, holds true. I couldn't care about the violently crashing value of the British pound, but trendy silver coins, they're mixing copper into them, thus reducing the overall silver content and therefore devaluing them surreptitiously. Are they insane? What in the name of God are they going to do next? Someone please tell me. I can't bear the suspense. And, speaking of suspense, whilst the 08 soundtrack is fantastic, as I'd imagine you'd agree, having listened to it for the duration of this review, in the 2024 go-around we're treated to the deft hand of one Kevin Penkin of Made in Abyss acclaim. His ever-ethereal, suspenseful music, there you see, there's the tenuous segue paid off in full, really helps underscore the more pagan, mystical elements of the narrative, like when Lawrence asked the magical alchemist if a human had ever railed a pagan god before. You know, the classic scene. Moving is what it was. It really is an incredible score though. I wish I had the language to accurately describe why it's so good, but the nuance of musical language isn't my forte. There's a low, bassy hum to a lot of Penkin's work that really creates an atmosphere of beauty and dread, and I wonder how much of that is because I associate him with Abyss. It works superbly regardless, and it does help set apart this retelling from the original. More mystical, less whimsical. This is a world where magic is real, and any traveling nun you see could be an errant demigod, so the soundtrack exemplifies and enhances that tone. If the 08 soundtrack made me think of a bustling marketplace, then the 24 soundtrack makes me think of a misty forest, where every once in a while you can hear a nasty witch laugh all horrible-like. Regardless, it's a pleasure to listen to, and it's probably the most standout change from the first animated adaptation. As far as things that are pleasures to listen to are concerned, something else I very much appreciated, having watched the original 08 run both in English and Japanese, is the return of Ami Koshimizu and Jun Fukuyama as Hollow and Lawrence respectively, as well as Brina Palencia and J. Michael Tatum for the English dub. Rather, it seems like they got most of the original voice actors back across the language barriers, even for more minor characters, and that's just very nice to see. In addition to the fact that I think Spice and Wolf got one of the better dubs the industry's seen. Miss Palencia especially did an excellent job. That said, I watched this one in Japanese, because Miss Koshimizu's voice has had me in a stranglehold ever since I watched Omamori Himari at a very impressionable point in my life and was afflicted with every kink the character she voiced embodied. You think I'd be talking about the Kimono Mimi Girl anime if I hadn't been Himari'd? Good fucking question. Chaos theory, isn't it? Butterfly flaps its wings, and then Omamori Himari gives me a thing for thigh highs. Wonder if Edward Lorenz had that in mind when he came up with it. But that's not the important question, life-defining as it is. The real question then becomes, as it always inevitably would, be whether one's time would be better spent watching the 2024 or the 2008 adaptations of Spicy Wolf. If one had to choose, say, under gunpoint, and that is a very, very tough question, one that probably warrants a video of its own. I'd actually be extremely interested in hearing the perspective of someone who went across these chronologically backwards, watching this adaptation, then through the one from 2008. I imagine they'd sing a different tune than my gut feeling on the matter, being that I think despite all the creative liberties the original adaptation took, and the fact its conclusion was weaker than the 24 series, I still prefer it overall. But again, I saw that one first. There's a poignant message about never being able to go home again in here somewhere that'd be a perfect note to end the review on, but that's a little self-indulgent and pretentious, and God forbid I embody those particular vices. But no, I don't want to bog this review down with a comparison, even if it's basically demanded. I might make that side-by-side video another time, perhaps when the now confirmed, at least nominally, second season is out for that hot SEO, but at the moment, I don't think I'm in a place to really give an unbiased opinion on which is the better adaptation. Bias is the best I can do for you, I know. A break in tradition from my usual, almost saint-like impartiality, but it is what it is. What I can do is say that it's still very much a story worth experiencing again, even if you've seen it before. Hollow and Lawrence are a genuinely entertaining couple to watch, and their relationship developing as Lawrence begins to find his confidence and Hollow begins to show her vulnerabilities is just as charming as it ever was. There's a very tangible sense of progress to how much they care about each other, mirrored in the nature of each of the arcs from this show, which I think is maybe the biggest advantage this series has over the original run, he says immediately going back to comparing the two. The pacing is far better, especially at the end. The first arc has Lawrence desperate and confused, with Hollow accidentally making their dire situation worse before she makes it better. The second is one where they're more effectively pace by pace and they truly begin to care deeply about each other. And the third has Lawrence mentoring another young couple through a difficult financial situation. They both grow and mature and also figure out how to tease one another relentlessly in a very palpable way. It's one of the great romances in the medium, and for good reason. It's a genuine delight to see the two of them bicker with each other, and that is, of course, the reason the show exists. And now that we're past where the first adaptation ended, the crystal ball has cracked. I don't know what's coming next, and that has me very excited to see the continuation. If this retreading of the beginning few arcs was just a launching off point to get into the next part of the story without leaving newcomers to it out in the cold, then that's more than enough justification for its existence in my eyes. Besides, I think the question of which is the better adaptation starts to fall flat under a direct comparison. It's a good story well told, and telling it again doesn't make it less enjoyable. I think there's absolutely enough merit to both incarnations that they each warrant existing, even if now I'd struggle to personally say which one is the definitive experience. Perhaps a definitive experience no longer exists, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The Wise Wolf is back, and for the time being, I'm excited about that. The Resident Evil 4 remake was incredible, for example, and just like hearing Leon say bingo, what is Spice and Wolf 24 if not an excuse to hear Ami Koshimizu say again? So regardless of how the second season turns out, regardless of where the story goes, I'm confident that even 15 years from now, I'll still think about that stupid wolf choking on a potato and go, anyone out here remember Hollow? And I'll be met with a cacophony of responses all saying, ah, Hollow, I miss her. Wait a minute. Is that a horse? On screen? Oh my god. Steel Ball Run is possible.
Hey, Cody.
What's up?
Do me a little favor. Could you do the witch laugh that you do, please? Thanks, bud.